Shanti. A very warm welcome to all of you. I'm not just happy, privileged, but I would say honored to have Dr. Roger Cole this evening amidst all of us. He's come all the way from Wollongong. That's a coastal city in Australia, south of Sydney, just along Grand Pacific Drive. Doctors, they're always sought after and looked upon as saviors and protectors of the humanity at large. This is a distinction which they hold, I would say, throughout the world. And their presence amongst the afflicted is considered to be godly. So we are proud to have such a doctor amidst us today. Doctor is an oncologist and he's a palliative medicine physician. I mean, he takes care of patients who are terminally ill. You know, when the soul is about to leave the body, on the verge of leaving the body, that is where he gives them real care, loving care. And Dr. Roger Cole has also written 3 books, and one of it is bestseller, and the name is Mission of Love. That's his bestseller book. And I had the opportunity of meeting Doctor and hearing his talk once when I was in Abu. He had addressed the Future of Power program delegates, and I got the chance to listen to him. I don't exactly remember what he had said then, yes, but it's been long now. But yes, I'm left with a deep impact of the angelic personality he has. And it gives me real pleasure. I'm really glad that we can have you here, and the Borivali family is going to be benefited by your profound wisdom and deep insights. So on behalf of the Borivali family and on behalf of us sisters, a very, very warm welcome to Dr. Roger Cole. And I would request the sisters to, Sister Dheeraj to welcome Doctor with flowers. Wonderful topic of today. It's healing power of love. And since Doctor has been in knowledge for more than 32 years now, so he's not just a doctor, not just an author, but a senior Rajyogi. And he must be having lots of experiences with Dadis as well. So we would want you to share your experience with Baba, with Dadis, along with the topic that you will be dealing with today. And maybe in the end, if time permits, we can also have a little question answer session. So over to Dr. Roger Cole. Let's give him a very big hand.
Thank you very much. It's such a beautiful, warm welcome. I feel loved already. When you come into such a family, there is such love. We all have so much love. We have such a beautiful source of love, and we have the specialty of yoga, union, connection, oneness. These things that create an expanded feeling of self that is not just inside here, but is everywhere. It's part of it. And I feel like I'm part of you and you're part of me already, which is a beautiful feeling. I'll talk to you a little bit about my own experience and journey, because it really is about the healing power of love in lots of ways. And I'm sure many of us have experienced such a powerful, pure and divine love in our spiritual life that we'll all be able to connect to that sensation. And the more connected we are, the more loving we feel, the more healing takes place in a natural way. When I'll start before I came to Baba, actually, because my initial experiences were quite powerful. When I trained as a medical oncologist, so my specialty is medical oncology, which is the chemotherapy treatment of cancer. But when I was in my training years, so I did in Australia, we do like 4 years of basic physician training in all specialties. And then we subspecialized for 3 years in the field of our choosing, and I chose medical oncology. Actually, I was going to be a cardiologist because cardiologist was always a hero. You know, they came rushing into hospital and saved lives. And I was always going to be that sort of person, like this superhero that came into hospital, saved all the lives. And then one night, I woke up in the middle of the night with 2 words in my mind. This is just straight out of sleep, sitting up in bed, middle of the night, and the 2 words were "do oncology, do oncology." So next day, I went to the oncologist and I said, "I want to do oncology." He said, "Okay, if you pass your exams, you can have the position." And I passed my exams. The other person who was trying for the position failed his, so I got the position, which was my good luck. My good luck is that he failed and I passed. But when I was training in those 3 years, I got to the last year of my training. And in the last year of my training, I thought to myself, I'm going to be a cancer specialist in 1 year's time, and I know nothing of what it feels like for a person to go through cancer as an experience. And I felt like I need to understand more about what it's like to have this disease and just be a doctor treating it. So what I did was I spent more time. I went to the bedside and I sat for longer with the patients, and I asked them lots of questions, you know, about their feelings, about the feelings and emotions they went through. And I asked them questions like, when you were diagnosed, how did it feel to be told about having a cancer diagnosis? And then when you've been treated with the cancer and you thought it had gone away and it came back and there's no cure, how does it feel to be told that? And I started to explore everything with them and hear their life story and how they felt about everything they were going through. Like, what does it feel like to be given these drugs we give you? What's it like to live with uncertainty and the knowledge that you could die one day? What's it like to live with not knowing how to plan your life next week, next month, next year? What's it like for a family when someone has a life-threatening illness that they're going to die of in the family? What are the emotions like? What's the grieving like? How hard is the feeling? And it's a hard journey. Believe me, it's a hard journey. You may have seen it as well in your life, but it's a hard journey. And I listened, and I just listened all the time, and I listened to many different types of people going through the same experience. And as I listened, the more I listened and tried to understand, I started to learn you don't just listen with your ears, you listen with your ears to the words, you listen with your heart to the feelings and the emotions. You listen with your attention to the body language, and you listen with your whole person to the whole person you're with. So you get a sense of everything about this person that you're with. And they're doing most of the talking. You're just prodding for a quick question. I'm trying to learn more. I'm trying to understand more. But what people are not used to a doctor giving them so much attention. And I started to hear that people were saying things that this was a very nice doctor. And if I felt so much better after talking to this doctor, everything felt different. I felt more like I had control, like I wasn't so distressed, I wasn't suffering, I wasn't on my own. And I started to realize at that moment that my interest in learning about their experience actually was helping them experience things better. It was actually helping them feel better, less distressed, less fearful, more like supported and more cared for and comforted. So I started to enjoy that feeling of actually relieving the suffering of others just by doing nothing. So I was just trying to learn about them, and I was doing nothing, but I was doing something because it was making a big difference to people. And And I started to really understand that somehow I'd been motivated to feel things that people were going through rather than to just treat things from a medical or doctor's perspective. And it was the beginning of a new journey because different opportunities arose after that. There was a lady who visited Australia called Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and she was a death and dying psychiatrist who in the 70s and 80s went around the world running workshops to teach people about how to look after the people who were dying. And I went to a workshop with her. It was kind of something I wasn't really expecting, because what Elizabeth tried to teach was to try to teach you unconditional love. But she said you had to for unconditional love, you needed to pass through unfinished business. The unfinished business is your past, the traumas that you carry with you, disappointments, the lack of love you've experienced in your life. And because all of these will become obstacles to the empathy I just described, as starting to get connected to a human experience, is the empathy that I was describing. And before compassion, there needs to be this empathy, this connection, the listening, feeling, the understanding, the heartfelt sense of being present with someone. And that part of compassion is absolutely essential if you want to learn about it. So in this workshop, what Elizabeth did was she took us through this kind of process of getting in touch with your feelings from traumas from your past. And in my past, I'd lost a sister when I was 10 years old, who was a tiny little 10-month-old child when she died a sudden infant death syndrome. And yeah, it was heartbreaking for me at the time. But I didn't know it. I carried it because I was a happy sort of person. I didn't believe in anything. I didn't believe in the soul or God or spiritual things. I was really a complete atheist, to be honest with you. And what happened in the workshop was we were taken into the feelings of those experiences of the past. We were sat down and we were given a telephone directory and a truncheon, like a big stick, to bang the directory with. So if we were angry, we could get all the anger out. If we were sad, we could cry all the tears out of the sadness and the loss. And what happened in the workshop is my heart broke open. And it broke open with all the sorrow of not just that experience, but I think maybe that experience was the key that unlocked my heart, to let all the sorrow out, not just for that loss, but maybe for all the losses of past lives, and everything that was grieving inside me got out, and I just cried and cried and cried for about 10 minutes, just totally broke down. I know this isn't quite Gyan, but you'll get there. So my heart broke, and it opened, and it emptied itself of all of darkness, of all of the shadows, of all the loss, of all the pain, of all the trauma of my past. And when my heart emptied, it was really a remarkable moment, because there was a space. And there was a space I wasn't familiar with. It was just like an empty space, emptiness. And it started to fill. It started to fill with this sense of peace. This well of peace started to take place where all the trauma was. Peace just went inside, until I just started to feel so expanded with peace. So like I was not just sitting there inside this body, but I was like starting to expand. And as this peace expanded, I felt liberated and free from everything of this world, totally liberated and free. And in that moment of liberation, freedom, and this beautiful, peaceful sensation, I started to feel overwhelming waves of bliss and love. I still had the tears on my face from where I was crying, but now it was just bliss and love and expansion, until I felt like I was one with everything. I felt like everybody was there inside me. The whole world, every human, every soul was there. I was part of everything. Everything was one. There was no feeling of separation. All separation was gone. I didn't feel like I was an individual body sitting away from another individual body. I just felt everything was oneness. All was oneness, just beautiful feeling of waves and waves of pure love. And I felt like this for 3 weeks. So when the workshop came to an end, I went back to work, okay? And I was just in love with everybody and everything. I was just this sort of being of love. It was like I was hanging from this ceiling, nothing but love, all love. And I had a specialist who was my supervisor at the time that I was in a bit of conflict with before I went to this workshop. And when I saw him, he was a senior clinician, a high doctor. And when I saw him, I just had to share it with him. I said, "I love you." That wasn't my best career move to date either. He got the team psychiatrist to see me. So the one who is in love needs a psychiatrist. And the team psychiatrist took me aside, and he was a really wise soul. He was a Christian soul, and he was the head of psychiatry in this teaching hospital in Sydney where I was training as an oncology. And he said to me that he'd noticed that I take more interest in the feelings and emotions of patients, and he offered me 12 months of supervision, personal supervision with him, where I would spend an hour a week in his office and talk through the things that had been happening. And he saw in me an opportunity to help me develop myself in a kind of more beautiful way. So he helped me become a better doctor in lots of ways in that 12 months. And I started to be able to ground the experience that I'd had. So the experience just blew me away. I was sort of overwhelmed, and it was just love. There was nothing but love. But then I started to realize that actually love could become intelligent and useful and directed. It doesn't have to be all over the place. Just what the heck is this, And I started to recognize as I grounded the feeling of love that actually what I'd experienced was pure state of being that had to be spiritual. It couldn't be anything but spiritual. I couldn't explain it in any other way. As I said before, I was an atheist before this happened. And I felt like as if God had revealed himself to me. It's like it was a moment when God came and scriptured me and said that you are my child, and you will always be with me. And I had this feeling of deep protection, deep appreciation, and the feeling of immense enthusiasm for life. We only have this, we have this life, and it should be joyful and full of enthusiasm and happiness and pleasure. We're not here to suffer, but there is so much suffering inside people, and there's so much feeling of separation in that suffering. And when there's separation, there's a feeling of lack and a potential for loss. And because when there's separation, you create special relationships where there can be actual loss take place in special relationships. And that's the way we grasp to try to experience love in this life when we've separated and lost who we are. And I realized that I'd found who I was in that workshop. And I started to meditate at that time and study not Raj Yoga meditation, but for 7 years, the next 7 years before I met Baba, but the next 7 years was actually a really incredible time for me because I was specializing in medicine. I got caught with this interest more in the suffering of patients. So I've in palliative care wasn't really developed at all as a specialty for care of the dying, but I started to feel that's where I wanted to go. I knew the specialty was starting to come. So I became part of the first wave of specialists in palliative medicine in Australia, which means I was one of the pioneers of palliative medicine in that country. And because I was meditating, excuse me, because I was meditating, the local Sydney branch, of the Brahmakumaris noticed me. and they sent someone to invite me to Mount Abu to go to a retreat up there in 1992. I was married. I had 2 young children at home at the time, and so I went to Mount Abu for the first time as a guest. I hadn't done the course. I didn't know what Raj Yoga was. Didn't know who the Brahmakumaris were. But in the months leading up to coming to Madhaban for the first time, I'd been sitting in my own meditation on this rock overlooking the ocean in Wollongong, south of Sydney, where I used to make myself tiny, so tiny, like I'm nothing. I mean, when I realized it, I am nothing really, nothing. Tiny, tiny. So I made myself sitting on the rock. I was sitting on the rock with the rock. That was quite big. Then I was sitting on the rock in Wollongong. That's not so big. And I was sitting on the rock in Sydney, Australia. That was not so big. Then I was sitting on the rock in Australia, and that was not so big. Then I was sitting on the rock in the world, and I was becoming much smaller. And I was sitting on the rock in the universe, and I was such a tiny little point on that rock. And when I was sitting there meditating, I was trying to have that experience that I had in the workshop. So I was starting to try to reach God, and I was talking to God and I was saying, "Come on, where's that experience? Where's all that love I had that time?" And as I was having this conversation with God, I started to realize, well, maybe God's trying to speak to me. Perhaps if I just quieten down a little bit and shut up and listen, I might have a chance of some sort of experience. So I sat down, and as I said, became really small and tiny, until I was feeling like I was nothing at all. So I was nothing. And then I just had the experience of opening myself up, opening up my heart and soul, and I just opened myself up to allow God, just to allow God. And I just started to allow God, instead of trying to reach God or get to God, be there on my terms. I just allowed God on God's terms to come to me. And I felt this expansion peace, this feeling of rising into God's hands and just God sort of taking me over and giving me this sense of love and purity and oneness again. And in that time when I started to meditate like that, I started to have a vision. Not really a vision, but a touching of the intellect, a touching of my intellect, sense of what's coming and what the future is. And in that sense of future, I felt I could see or sense destruction coming, that there was a huge kind of end of the world type of scenario, like a destruction would take place. And I kept seeing this sapling growing, like a pure new growth. And I knew in my heart that something was going to change, that it was going to be a beautiful, wonderful, immensely satisfying and lovely eternal change that I could look forward to. Of course, I came to Madhaban for the first time, and no one gave me the course ever. I haven't done the course ever with any person, so I don't have like a mother in the Yagya. But I did the course in this retreat because the Brahmakumaris were there to get sort of a few VIPs to Madhaban and then tell them the whole story and make them see if they'll accept any of it. And I accepted all of it in one moment, because when I was in Madhaban, you've probably seen this sort of, I think outside Gyan Sarovar, there's a picture of the cycle. And in the cycle, it's like a big cake, and it's got this little kind of conference age slice at the top of it. And I looked at that and I said, there's my vision. I saw this is the vision I had. This is what I've seen in my intellect coming here before. And I just went, this is it. And I was buying those little booklets, the Avyakt Murlis. And when I started to read the Avyakt Murli booklets, I felt this only God could write this. And this has not been written by a human being. This has come from God. And so I felt this kind of deep sense that God had brought me to the mountain and was teaching me directly and was giving me inspiration. to become Brahmakumari. Brahmakumar. You know, I'm Australian. I don't know what all these terms mean sometimes. And when I was in Madhaban the first time, the retreat was 1 week. Now I had 1 week spare afterwards, 1 week more. And in that 1 week more, I could go and travel or do things, but I put nothing into it. I just left it open for whatever happened. And I heard during the week that there was this meeting going to take place the following week. And this meeting with Baba was going to take place the following week. So I kept myself open, and I started to go. I spoke to Dadi Janki initially, so I went to Dadi and had a conversation with Dadi where I said, you know, sometimes I don't know how many opportunities you've had to sit with Dadi, but I felt kind of pathetic and weak. Really, I didn't feel very strong and powerful. I felt like this little boy, kind of like a little naughty boy, really. And I said to her, "Listen, I'm here, and Baba's coming next week, and I'd like to meet Baba." And she said to me, "Only if you surrender completely, everything you must surrender, and you can meet Baba." And so I felt weaker and more pathetic. And I said, maybe I should have a conversation with my wife. And she said, well, and she said, well, yes. So you can't meet Baba. So I wasn't allowed to meet Baba. And then the Australian group were kind of, sometimes when people have been to those retreats and the VIP special retreats and things, sometimes people have stayed on and met Baba without having been students for very long. So there was a big conversation taking place with the sort of Australian group wanted me to meet Baba. They said, don't give up, keep asking. So I went back to Dadi and I said, I think I'm supposed to, Baba. I think I'm supposed to be here. I think I'm supposed to meet Baba while I'm here. I think it's supposed to happen. I think it's actually supposed to be my destiny. And Dadi was like very kind of firm, and she looked at me. She was kind of a little bit stern as well, and you know, no, this won't happen. This can't happen. So I was a little bit okay, so I'd had a beautiful kind of retreat for a week, and then I was a bit flat because I felt really like I was flying after the week's retreat. I felt totally kind of renewed. I felt sort of I felt powerful in a sense of the intellect really felt clear and just beautiful. I was walking around in a beautiful state of mind, just in a state of pure love. And so I was been on that high point, and now I was in like this low point, like, you're not good enough. You're not good enough. I'm afraid, unless you can be better than this, you can't have the ultimate prize. So I went to my room and I was packing my bags, feeling not good enough. I was packing my bags to leave, because I was meant to leave before Baba came, which was about 2 days later. So I was packing my bags in this kind of like poor little me type of feeling. And one of the sisters from the Australian group said that because I decided I'd go and stay out in one of the hotels or somewhere, stay in Abu. I just move out into one of the hotels. I'll just hang around a bit and see what happens. And anyway, one of the Daddy heard about that, so one of the sisters was sent to talk to me, and the sister said, Daddy said doesn't want you to stay out in the town. Daddy says you can stay, but you can't meet Baba. So I stayed, and for the next 2 days I had a lot of yoga with everybody, and then I went down to the town and I got dressed up like a BK. And I bought the whites and got all the whites, and I dressed up and got a little badge, put the badge on. And I walked around around in the courtyard in Mount Abu, in Pandav Bhavan, and Didi Nirmala, who was looking after Australia at the time, she saw me, and she saw me, and she said, "Come, Roger." So she sat me down and said, you'll come to meet Baba, have you? And I said, well, yes, kind of general idea. And so she indicated, so she Didi allowed it, and she stepped back. I mean, Didi was not always the person who would allow things to happen like that, but she allowed it. And she said, go the first timers and meet in the meditation hall, go with the first timers. So Didi gave permission, and anyway, I went to meet Baba that night, and of course I didn't really understand everything. And I hadn't been properly prepared for the meeting in terms of all the purity and everything. But I got to the point where, when you go in those days, I know it's not happening nowadays, but in those days you would walk on the stage, and everyone would file past first the Dadi Janki, and then Bapdada on stage with and then off the stage. So I first had to go past Dadi Janki, Drishti, who's gone, no, I can't meet Baba. And when I got to the Drishti, everything was so serious for me. Then I was like, what the heck am I going to do here? So I just covered my face. And Dadi Janki was laughing, and she said something to Bapdada about this soul here. And Bapdada sort of looked at me, and I put my hand forwards onto the desk in front of him when I was taking drishti. Then he thought I was doing something with my hand, so he looked at my hand. So I missed the drishti in that moment, and then I left. But I felt like it was not the right stage in a way, but it was drama, and I felt victorious in a way, but rather in a kind of wrong way. But I felt it was like a victory. But it was a beautiful moment in drama, and I didn't feel the love on the stage at that moment. But for the next 2 days afterwards, I was in a state of total love. My heart was just open, and it was full of pure feelings of love. I just floated around, almost like I wasn't in my body half the time, and I just felt this connection with everything and everyone. Like, once you open that heart like that, the connection is unlimited. It's as if the whole universe lives inside of us, and love is the thing that opens the heart to the whole universe, to the whole of creation. So in 1 second, you can be everywhere at the same time. And I had that feeling floating around of being everywhere at the same time, being part of everyone, and everyone being part of me. It's really like the total belonging that comes from no feeling of separation whatsoever. All separation was gone. No separation. Baba takes away all separation. Gone. We never. It was an illusion that we ever separated from Baba. Really, but we were living that illusion for 5,000 years of separation. But it's not real, and we are all one. When you take away the body right now. If the body's not there, the soul is there. Energy is there. All one. And when love actually takes over, love then guides and directs the energy. Be all one. No separation, nothing. No separation from Baba, no separation from one another. All one. Feeling of all one. Connection, connected through pure energy, nothing else. Beautiful feeling. So my first visit to Madhaban was extraordinary in some ways. I came home feeling like I'd been a naughty boy, but I got away with it. And I haven't been traveling so much recently. I traveled quite a bit for a few years, especially after writing Mission of Love as a book. I was invited because it was released in different countries, and all the BKs around the world invited me to go and release the book in different places. And I went to a lot of hospitals and places all around the world, which was a great privilege for me. But I got to meet so many of you, which was just so beautiful. I mean, today, I was being given a good introduction. To be honest with you, when we open our hearts to one like this, and we open up ourselves, and we become one, we're blessing each other. And I feel like the Baba's brought me here to be blessed by all of you, and I feel that blessing, especially with the science and spirituality program tomorrow at the Tata, which I'm part of. But I feel like I'm taking the blessing of every single soul here to Tata with me tomorrow. And when I sit to give a talk tomorrow on compassion, I'm going to have all of you in my heart, so that you can represent me and make me look good and better than I am. Because I mean, Baba is our source of remembrance, but relationship is where spirituality is about relationship, and compassion is about how we give ourselves to others, and how we stay compassionate and loving towards ourselves. Love and kindness being the principal virtues, really, that underlie. So love and kindness. If I practice, I have this argument with my wife. So I'm married in Australia. I've got 2 children. My wife's a BK as well. She couldn't come on this trip, so next time she's going to come back. I think sometimes she's a bit crazy, but I don't think we always understand each other. But we have this banter, because my wife thinks everything is from the heart. Really, it's all from the heart. You've got to become heart-centered, and love and feelings are all from the heart. And I'm going, I think Baba really tells us we have loving intellects. and this balance of intellect and heart is an interesting dynamic. And one of the things that I've started to realize is that if you take love and kindness and you turn those into expression of love, care and compassion towards others, or appreciation and gratitude for others, towards others or for others, these are actions, and compassion is an action. Gratitude is an action, and it brings love into the framework of practical life. And I feel that those are the very healing things. If you do something for someone, now I know we say, "Thank you, Baba," and that's accurate. But it's really nice when that person says, my wife taught me about this as well, because someone said to my wife, "Thank you so much thank you. You were really nice the way you did that." And she went, "Oh, thank you." I mean, she so appreciated the little blessing that she was given. And she did it in such a sweet way. I started to realize I've actually got to become more sweet in my way. Because if I can just feel, "Oh, thank you," it's such a beautiful, blessed kind of feeling in the mind and the heart that it generates a different chemistry. And in the end, well-being is a function of the chemistry of the body. And when you meditate and you experience love from Baba, and you have that deep feeling of desire to be close to God and to serve, maybe not getting too carried away, but starting to learn how to be natural. One of the things for this year, I've had my main mantra has been trust the yoga, trust your yoga, trust in all the yoga you've accumulated over the years. Trust the yoga is with you. So that when I go to see a patient or a family, I'm still working in palliative care. When I go to see a patient or a family, if I sit down and I try to know what their problems are, hear what their suffering is, and I can soon determine that they're distressed emotionally because they don't understand what's going on. So for this person, all I need to do is explain what's going on. or this person's in so much fear and distress, they just need my company for 5 more minutes rather than me run away. Because a lot of time doctors will be actually seeing you, and when they're seeing you, they're remembering the last person they've seen, and they're also remembering how much time they've got before the next person they've got to see. So they're not actually with you at all. They're just floating past, So I started to realize this is such an important value of love, is if I spend time and I give attention, I give full attention without making people uncomfortable, like concentrating on them too much. But I give full attention, like just I'm there with them and I'm listening to what's going on, and I'm explaining what's happening and why they're feeling like they are. And then I'm looking at what I can do to relieve pain and distressing symptoms that are actually making life miserable and suffering. And as I do that, I'm starting to learn how to talk to them, how to support them, so I support emotionally. I talk to them and explain what's going on, helps the mind. If the mind is helped to understand the story a bit better without frightening too much, then there's a more feeling of control in the person. That if you give them back a sense of control, they start to cope better and their emotions are less distressing to them, and they can start to live a better life again with the feeling that I still have a life to live. I'm not just dying. I'm living. I still have this life, and this life still have a lot in it. In fact, it might be shorter than I expected it to be. So you can create these opportunities by being there, but when you're there, it's the attention you give. Give attention. Be natural in yourself. Be yourself, but give attention. And don't make people uncomfortable by giving too much attention. I was with, sometime after coming to Baba, I was with I had a lesson from a 19-year-old girl who had an advanced cervix cancer. She was in the terminal phase of that cancer, and her whole life had been destroyed, and she was suffering as much as any human being I've seen suffering, mentally, emotionally, all turned inwards. There was no source of hope that she was reaching for, and she didn't want any kind of spiritual talk. It was just, sometimes when you're in suffering, you can't see outside of it. And so no fancy explanations is going to help that person. And except for being able to have you there to share the experience, share what they're going through. So they don't want a solution from you. They just need to process the story, tell the story, share it with them, even if it's miserable and depressing and gives you nothing to be happy about yourself. You keep going back to that person and let them be negative, be negative, be negative. That's their way at the moment. They will change in time at some time, but you're giving them a chance to be who they are. You're not judging them for suffering or being what you don't want them to be. If that person was in acceptance and peace, I'd feel good about myself. That person's not in acceptance and peace. They're angry, they're fed up, they're sick, and they're screaming at the world, and they want the whole world and everything in it to go away, including me, because I represent everything they don't want. And when they're raging at the world like that, they don't need another solution, because everyone's offered them solutions that didn't work. So solution becomes part of the trauma. So you can't give them, you don't go rushing in to give them Baba's introduction, because they're likely to kick you out the door. But and first thing is, I'm there as a doctor, not as a I'm not there as a preacher or as a priest or anything. I'm there as a doctor, but I'm spiritual internally. So if I can I don't lose myself to anybody. This is what spirituality teaches you. It grounds you in, and part of love is it deepens your sense of self, and you understand yourself in a different way, which doesn't have so much self-doubt. And if it doesn't have self-doubt, you don't doubt others. You start to trust more, and as you trust more, trust gives you a calmer sensation of peace. And the chemistry of that is that you start to release more serotonin and happiness enzymes and dopamine and oxytocin enzymes that actually have good feeling in them. And your well-being starts to improve because you've got compassion and you care and you're doing something for someone. And I was going to tell you the story about this 19-year-old girl. So I decided I'll just stand there. I'll give her drishti. So I stood with her and I gave her drishti. Surely this is going to be the healing of everything for this young woman. And she looked at me and she goes, "What are you staring at?" And I said to her, "Oh, are you okay? How's your pain today?" But it was a moment of just that lesson of be natural, be yourself. If drishti comes naturally into a kind of process of connection with another human being, and it's lovely, that's beautiful and great. But ensure the context is okay. Feel the pulse, as Baba says. And I think that's one of the main things that I have to say is just be yourself. Just be yourself. You're a beautiful, wonderful soul. You're a beautiful being of light. You're an eternal being of love. You're a pure being of peace. That's who you are. Be yourself with all the kind of rubbishy bits as well. But just be yourself with all the rubbish that's there as well, and trust the yoga that'll shine through in relationship. I don't solve problems the way I used to solve them anymore. I actually start to. I mean, I believe there's a part of creation which is an energy field that encompasses everything. It's in all the space between things. It's in everything that's supposedly solid. Everything is actually just light energy, and that's creation. And in a sense, I think creation was something that we did as we separated from Baba with one thought, maybe to experience life or to experience the cycle or to go to the golden age. One thought there was a collective consciousness of all souls together. One thought to separate from Baba. And in the same instant that separation took place, Baba healed it and brought the healing of that separation together in this very same instant. But that instant is in a dimension of no time outside, the pure sort of soul world. There's no time. And in that instant of healing separation, we came out here and experienced 84 births in 5,000 years. And we're still living that instant now. The instant was completed in one instant, and the whole cycle was finished, past, present, and future. And we're just about to return back home. In that instant, it was like Baba's clapped his hands and he says, "Come on, it's time to come home." And this is love's mission. So the book I wrote was called Mission of Love. But it's not a mission of love, it's love's mission. Love's mission is to take away everything that separates us in our physical world, but also in our thoughts and feelings and emotions, that we have a sense of appreciation and gratitude for each other, and that we care and we're compassionate in our caring for each other. And we develop that through love and kindness for ourselves. So love and kindness is for myself, and then care and compassion is for others. And the love and kindness for myself includes lots of feelings like gentleness, warmth, sweetness, all those soft things, but it also contains tolerance, power, and patience, the powerful things that hold us steady. And I don't lose myself to the feelings of others. I don't lose myself to the illusion of anger. I don't lose myself to the illusion of sorrow. I mean, these things are very real to people going through it, but they're illusions because they don't represent truth about who we are. If they're not true, they're not real. So I know that these illusions are going to go, and the more I can stay true to myself and not react to the anger of someone else, if I'm not reacting to the anger of someone else, then I'm not making their illusion real for them or for myself. So I'm not caught up. Don't get trapped in the personalities of other people. And I think that's part of empathy as well. It's part of what I learned by listening to people so much in those early days, that I started to understand how to be who I am and do the best I can to help others, both by using skills, knowledge, and training that I've got, and also using my personality, nature, and interest in doing something that helps people in the heart. I'll tell you one little story just to finish on. I've just about got time for that. I want to tell you about what doesn't matter. Is that a good story? What doesn't matter? It was a patient I wasn't taught this by a guru or a daddy. I was taught this by a patient who'd destroyed his life with alcohol. And he had a cancer of his liver. He got himself into a terrible state towards the end of his life. His family had deserted him because he'd been abusive, and he didn't have his children wouldn't have anything to do with him. He didn't have any friends. He was completely on his own. And he only came into hospital because he couldn't walk anymore. So he was collapsed on the floor in his house, and he was brought in because he was too weak to walk. And when he came into hospital, he was put into a bedroom with 4 other patients, and he wouldn't have anything to do with anybody. He wouldn't let the doctors near him. He wouldn't let anyone take any bloods. He wouldn't let the nurses take his blood pressure or his pulse or his temperature. He just curled up in a corner and just wanted the world to go away. He just dismissed everybody. He dismissed everybody in kind of an aggressive and angry kind of way. He wasn't very nice. He wasn't a very nice man. I walked into that, and when I saw him in the bed, he was turned away from me, and all of his body language was telling me to get lost, go away, and probably worse language than that, but it was like, go away in the worst possible thoughts. And I went to see him, and I couldn't see anywhere I could make a relationship happen. There's no way to create any relationship or say anything, because he was just finished everything like that. One word, I'd say one word or 2 words, and he finished it like that. Stop, stop, stop was kind of, he was saying. So I thought I better respect that. So all I thought I can do is I can only tell him what we're going to do. That's all. So I told him that he was going to move from this hospital to another hospital, which was the palliative care hospital, the hospice where you go to die, and we were going to move him from this hospital to that hospital for the rest of his life. And then I left it at that. It was really cold. I didn't like it. It felt horrible to me. And I turned around to walk out of his curtains were closed around his bed. So I turned around to walk out. And I got to the curtain, and I just opened the curtain to move out. And a thought came into my mind, is what a terrible place to die from. What a terrible way to die with that kind of state of mind. So I just did something which I probably I did something I shouldn't have done, but I always do things I shouldn't do. So this was normal for me. So there's no way I should have invaded his space, but I turned round, I walked over to him, put a hand on his chest like that, and I said to him, I am so sorry that you are so sick that there's no way that you can get back up on your feet. Your liver is in a state of total failure, and you don't have very much longer to go. I am really sorry, but the only place where you can be now is palliative care. And I said to him, and we will look after you like a brother and a friend. And he actually just softened in front of my eyes. He teared up. His tears came out, and he put his hands over mine, and I put my other hand over his. So there were 4 hands on his chest, right over his heart. And we just held a moment of sweet relationship, drishti, connection. It's a sweet connection between us. And I walked out then. Now, he had to be transferred to another hospital, but there were no beds, so he was put under my care for 2 more days. I saw him 2 days later. And 2 days later, when I saw him, he said he changed. It was clear he wasn't the same person. He was receiving care from the nurses. He wasn't resisting it. He was allowing everything. He was allowing his personal care to be done. He was allowing his pulse and blood pressure to be monitored. He was just basically a much more accepting, comfortable person, and his face looked different. He just looked calm and relaxed. I said to him, "You're nothing like when I first met you. What's changed? How are you?" And he said, "What's changed? How's this changed so much?" And he said to me, "Well, after you spoke to me and talked to me about palliative care, I was just thinking about palliative care all the time, over and over and over. And I was feeling really sad, and I felt really bad about my life, really guilty about how I treated everybody. And then he said something happened. And I'm like, yeah, come on, what happened? What was that? He said, I heard 2 words in my mind. 2 words spoke to me. A voice spoke to me in my mind. 2 words. And those words were... I could hardly hear him because his voice was so weak. He could hardly hear a word he was saying. And I'm leaning right in. I go, yes, what were they? What were they? What were these 2 words? And he said, nothing matters. Nothing matters. And in those 2 words, where nothing matters, he said, I felt so peaceful. Nothing matters. I felt so peaceful. And you know, like it was like all of the kind of nature and personality, all of his past, everything mattered. Now is the only time I have. And I think maybe that moment when I changed, when I did something I shouldn't do, like I invaded his space. He was kind of maybe the moment of just being guided to do the right thing at that moment in the right time for that person. Because I put a hand right over his heart, which is where he was hurting and pained and broken. And in that moment, just talking to him as a human being rather than as a doctor, just being human with him and sharing a bit of humanity in terms of who we are together, it healed something. And I think he felt like he belonged somewhere rather than he was an outcast and no value whatsoever. It's like he valued something about himself again, and he felt we can all take that. That's like this is an alcoholic who's destroyed his life, teaching us to remember that nothing matters. Take that one thing away from today. Nothing matters. Nothing matters at all. Nothing matters. Stop mattering. Stop mattering. It doesn't matter. You got a problem? It doesn't matter. So Shanti.